Now, to kind of push on with the idea of Satomi being perhaps not so good anymore, she murders a number of people.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another bonus episode of the Script Heroes podcast. This is a back issue deep dive into Radiant Red.
That's right, we've read Radiant Black on, I believe that was all the way back at issue one of the
Was it issue
pod.
one? It was issue
I
one.
believe it was issue one. And that little teaser at the end of it, that sixth issue with Radiant Red, really grabbed us. So we are talking about it here.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, that's pretty much the lead-in. Katie, do you want to get to summary and credits?
For sure. So, Radiant Red. To her students, Satomi Sone is a diligent middle school teacher. To her fiance and parents, she's the rock of the family. To the world, she's Radiant Red, bank robber turned matter absorbing superhero. But when Chicago's criminal underbelly comes calling, not to mention the nosy reporter on her doorstep and the $2.5 million in cash hidden in the air vents of her house, she's going to have to decide who she is, and quickly, before the world chooses for her. Our team here is going to be Cherish Chen. Writing, she did the one shot for the back of Radiant Black Volume 1. We also have David LaFuente and Mikel Muerto as our art duo there. Our letters are Diego Sanchez and Becca Carey.
Um. Yeah, I think the are the double letters actually on the main story, or is one of those for the
So
backups?
Becca Carey and Kyle Higgins both worked on the prologue, which
Yeah.
is, I believe, that first one from Radiant Black.
Gotcha. I know there's some backup stories here. And oh, you said Chen worked on the back of Radiant Black. Just to clarify, you mean issue 6 of Radiant
Yes.
Black.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, without further ado, do you want to talk about Radiant Red a little bit?
Let's do it. You were obviously incredibly thrilled to talk about that issue six when we discussed
I
Radiant
think it's
Black,
such a good single issue, and I'm
right?
gonna there's a couple of that. It's wild though because we go from that, which is a really well done just self-contained issue, um it's a one shot. It is also a lead in issue to this in many ways. It's collected with the Radiant Red volume 1. But what I will say is it's kind of a quick turn to Radiant Red number 1, which is a really slow issue.
It
2
really
through 5,
is.
not at all. Issue 1's really slow, and it kind of I don't know. It's a little weird because it jumps around with her relationship with Owen quite a bit. Like they
Hmm.
kind of break up and get back together, both off screen to some extent, um, which is kind of weird. That being said, once I get past issue 1, I really enjoy the rest of the trade. But I thought issue 1 was a little weird and a little clunky. I also thought LaFonte's art feels a little different in issue 1. I felt like all of the women really look like children in issue
They
1, and
do.
it kind of steadily gets back to where like all of his characters are a little bit youthful because it is
Hmm.
that simplistic style, and once we get to action and emotion, like so well done. The action in this trade is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I
I'm gonna
think
keep
a
calling it a
lot of
trade
the
in
the
this
kind of
miniseries.
youthizing the characters comes from how kind of small the characters are with their giant hands and feet, which is not my favorite thing. Um, it's not always distracting, but every so often it really does kind of jump out at you, and you're like, "Ooh, all right."
It's interesting.
That.
I felt like it was most on me and their civilian for like sometimes she would just
Mhm.
be next to like a character who kind of looked more like an adult, and I'd be like, "Are you trying?" Like the worst I think were the school scenes because like whenever she's leaving a
Mhm.
classroom or something, I'm like you look like a student, you
Yeah,
don't look like an adult.
and I mean, it doesn't
Um,
help that she's very short.
yes,
So,
but
like,
like
even
you
size
can
wise, she
draw a
looks
short character
smaller
that
than
is
the other
you can draw a
characters.
short character, and like I
For
feel
sure.
like there's moments in this where she looks very much like that's how she should look.
Hmm.
In issue 6 of Radiant Black, I felt like she looked pretty, adult like.
Yeah.
those are my trependencies. The further we get into the series, the more I love it. To where issue 4 and 5, I think, are just absolute top tier comic books. You know,
Yes.
like we get to such heavy emotion. I want to say, yeah, issue 4 has like all the kind of like moral questioning of what
Mhm.
she's gonna do, and then issue 5 just is an absolutely
It
powerful
drives it home.
conclusion on every level. So yeah, don't let those hesitancies like make you think the disparaging of the book. I just think it takes a little bit to get rolling, but
Yes.
once it gets rolling, it
Hmm.
does not look back. And like, credit to it's Cherish Chen, is that
Yep.
the, yeah, okay, Cherish Chen, for like, when this is all you've done in comics are that issue of Radiant Black and this miniseries, it's really strong work to be
Yeah.
all you've done in comics. So like, a ton of credit, because it's not easy to just jump in, especially and do like a one shot and then do a
Hmm.
mini series out of it. Like, very, very impressive on every level.
Absolutely. Something we talked about in our Creator Corner a couple episodes back is kind of transferring between mediums. And I think you had mentioned that she's done work in TV and film, and I think you can
Yeah.
see the just the groundwork in there. Something that I was really struck by was how much I liked all of the characters that she introduced. Like, I think that Shift was super well done. We got a
Oh,
lot
I
of
loved Shift.
personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the
Such a
expanding
punchable
on
man.
Owen was really, really good, because I'm not gonna lie, in the one shot, or the in Radiant Black #6, I didn't like him. I think that they made uh
I thought his complexity was started there. He was definitely less likable there, but I did
yeah.
think the complexity was started there. I think I mentioned that when we talk about
Mhm.
the collected, that arc on the pod. But it
Yeah,
really
and
does
I
flesh
didn't
out
find
here.
him as complicated in that one, which makes sense because it's a single issue. I very much just saw him as just an asshole boyfriend who has squandered her grad school funds on gambling debts.
Oh,
Uh,
I mean, that's obviously there. Like, don't,
yes, yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
nobody's saying that this man is a good guy, but you get
For
more of
sure.
that here.
But I think it's also one of those things that's kind of important for Satomi's character growth, to recognize that she has outgrown him and they aren't right together, even though we see what is arguably the biggest mess up he made at the very start when she's determined to stay with him after he stole money from her. Uh,
Well, we get somewhat of a shift too, because you go to she's outgrown him. I don't think that's an accurate representation of what's going on here. I think it's much more we get a shift of like, okay, she kind of goes off the rails a little bit. We have that amazing scene of like her shouting at him,
yeah.
which is really like brutal, because she's just pissed and somewhat rightfully, but also going to like he's in the right in the extent that he's telling her, don't be a bank robber, don't hurt people and be a criminal and be awful, but like he doesn't have a ton of footing to stand on. So
Oh,
it's
for
this
sure.
very interesting, complex scene. And then when she breaks up with him, I think it's actually one of the most mature breakups in like fiction that I've seen, because you usually have,
Mhm.
it's very much just like, this is not good for us. We cannot be in a relationship. We need,
Yeah.
and they both kind of accept it and they both part ways. So I feel like saying she outgrows him is a little bit of a
I think it's
mischaracterization of the way that
You're
they
right. You're
part.
right. It's not that she outgrew him. It's that I think that she, through this, really comes into herself, which is oftentimes how you realize that you're not in a great partnership. Like, I think reading that one shot, you can very much understand the relationship that's going on there, where she's kind of giving and giving and giving. And
Yeah,
in here, we do see her fuck up and become also
absolutely.
not a great partner. But
Yeah,
that's
she's
also
definitely
where
less
she's.
saintly in this than she is in the one shot. Where like obviously she's still going out and committing crimes, but in the I keep calling it a one shot. In Radiant Black 6, she's much more treated as like she has to do this. This is she's very much in the right and she's like
Mhm.
understandable. Whereas this is like there's much more complexity here of like no, she's kind of starting to cross lines and do things that she shouldn't be doing, and
Exactly.
yeah,
And I think we even see during her fight with Owen, we see her kind of reject that it's all because of him.
yeah,
Like, he's concerned
which
that
was a
he's
great
turned her
moment
into
too.
this right. The
But
relationship
it's like I said,
writing
there's
between the two of them is
complexity
so
there
good.
because like she's right in like this of like I'm not all of it, but also like the way that she snaps when he's also in the right of like no, I like you did start doing this because of his
Yeah.
gambling, and he feels bad about that, and obviously again there's some rightness there to be like no, everything I am isn't because of you, but then there's
Right.
also the rightness of his side where you're like
Yeah.
well, he dug a hole and you're getting them out in this incorrect way. So it's just very complex and very good,
Yes.
characters mesh, two characters with defined personalities and defined weaknesses and defined goals and motivations intersecting in a very real way.
Now, to kind of push on with the idea of Satomi being perhaps not so good anymore, she murders a number of people with like
Oh yeah.
mercury poisoning in the air. I loved
Yeah.
that.
That
Right?
was a
Is
great
that
scene where
that's
she
what you
kills
got
all
from that as well, right?
I don't think that's quite what it was. It
What do
was
you
that
think it was then?
she was like taking all the molten stuff and filling
Mhm.
the bins, and then they noticed that she didn't quite put all of it in there, so I assumed that she had pumped it into each of them.
Right. So with the mercury poisoning.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I was misconstruing. Like she, I guess I don't know. How do you phrase like putting in it? Mercury
I
poisoning
would call
sounds
that
wrong when it's
poisoning.
like this. It feels, especially like this isn't actual mercury. This is like an element called mercury something. So I feel like that's a distinction.
I mean, fair enough. She essentially
Um,
used this horrible chemical to murder these people.
yeah, I don't know. I thought it was more of a molten thing where like she essentially like put molten material into them. I don't know.
In any case,
Yeah. In any case, not really important. Um,
that's kind of a
yeah.
big step. You
Yeah.
know?
No. That scene was amazing. Where she kills all of the like um goons and then the
Yep.
main woman. Um, except for I'm sorry, what was his name? Was it Shift
Shift.
or what? Yeah. And Shift's actually weirdly okay with it. He's like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
that's chill.
I
Like
mean, it makes sense that
we can be fine.
he is a villain. Like,
Yeah.
we also read at least part of Radiant Black Volume 2, and
I read all of Radiant Black Volume 2. Katie's part of is for her.
all right, throw me under the bus. Tragic. But yeah, we see Shift pop up there as a villain for Radiant Black. Very briefly, I think it's just a kind of couple pages. Uh, but that kind of her appearing alongside him and working with him and killing these people. I mean, it's not very heroic. One could say.
No. I mean, it's also to some extent reasonable, seeing as like their whole thing is they're gonna hunt down and murder literally everyone she cares about,
For
and
sure.
there's not much you can do on that front besides taking care of it.
Mm,
But it's definitely that sort of when you're shifting into the gray area of
hmm
her character. Um,
Exactly. Which, because I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think we've seen Radiant Black kill anyone.
I don't buy. Marshall's got to have killed some people.
I
I
don't
don't know.
think we've
Marshall doesn't
seen.
exactly seem like he's got all that strong of a moral code. Not gonna
No, but
lie.
Nate certainly didn't. And I don't
Nate
think
didn't.
we've seen Marshall kill anyone.
That's a great. I know he wants to kill Sadami. Like
Oh,
that
he
was his
certainly
whole
does,
thing for a
yeah.
while. And if she keeps making it, she does at the end here. Spoilers coming up. I mean, there's been spoilers, but big spoiler coming up. She does end it with turning herself in, which is where I was
Yes.
talking about such like a cool, powerful. She literally goes from like this great moment of like the breakup and like we can't to then turning herself. Like there's just so
hmm
much self awareness, self discovery, like possession of herself in this book to then be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I figured out what I have to do here. I'm going to turn myself in here. Really good stuff. Interested to see where that goes. Most likely in the main Radiant book, because there is no more Radiant Red. This is all that exists.
Yes, at least
Um,
for now. I don't know if something's in the pipeline, but either
yeah,
way,
this
I'm
was
sure that this is resolved.
2021 though, I think,
Mhm.
which is substantially long
Oh yeah,
ago,
for
or
sure. Like I
2022,
don't, I
whatever
don't
it's
think
been.
something's coming, but I hope.
Yeah, yeah, I would love it to, and obviously, LaFuente is on Sinister Sons now, so
Yes,
you know, I don't know if it's really in the pipeline for the immediate future, but
fair
wouldn't
enough.
be opposed,
But yeah, it's
at
it's
all.
such a good kind of. I feel like this series, the Radiant Black and Radiant Red, have been very good at. I don't really want to say subverting superheroism, but like kind of grounding it a bit. And the idea of her realizing that she committed these crimes and then turning herself in, I feel like is something that you don't really
Yeah,
see all that
yeah.
often.
No, no, I don't know if I'd agree that Radiant Black is a grounding of superheroes. It feels like that's not really Radiant Black, especially Volume 2, gets real fucking crazy. Um, and that's what like I feel like Radiant Red's strength is that it is very focused
Hmm.
comparatively. Like kind of when we talk about Radiant Black Volume 1, like our main issue is that it kind of shifts what it's doing. I also
Yeah.
feel like Volume 2 does the same thing, where it kind of shifts what it's doing part way through. It has a little bit more of a through line that's clear, but like the content shifts, I think, wildly after the first two issues. Um, this is very focused. This knows what story it's telling, and it
Yeah.
tells a story beginning, middle to end. And that makes this, out of the 3 volumes of Radiant material so far, this is my favorite. I think that this is exceptionally strong in telling a focused story, in having constant, while still letting things, that have slight twists and turns, it's
Hmm.
constant in the type of content that it's delivering to you, in the emotion, in the art style, in the just exceptional action that makes, LaFonte such a talented artist. It's really, I think the action is just on a top tier
Yeah,
level.
do we actually want to focus in on that for a hot
Yeah,
minute? Because the
I am
action
more than
really is
happy
so
to.
good. The fights, there's so much, and I think this is very important for Radiant Red specifically. I feel like there's a ton of weight in the action here. Like there
Yes.
you feel the punches, you feel the stabs. They're just kind of like what we talked about with Radiant Black. There are people flying through walls. There's just so much property damage. It all feels very heavy, which makes so much sense
Massive
for,
fists.
yes, for like a matter absorbing hero whose whole thing
Yeah.
is essentially super strength.
And like there's so much molten material in this that
Hmm.
really feels it, like
Oh
it
yeah.
feels like it has that heat, that weight, that destructivity to it.
Hmm.
Every time an action sequence happened, I was so excited because it was just so phenomenal. We
Yes.
have some interesting I don't know if you want to rename the colorist or colorists, I can't remember, but the color, we have some coloring shifts for certain sequences in like
Hmm.
the heist sequence, for example.
I loved
Coloring's
when
really
they
strong in
did
it.
the planning for the heist sequence,
Yes.
and we got
Yes.
that felt so cinematic.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um
Yeah, that was so cleverly done and so effectively done. They're like kind of basked in this green light almost. And then we see that play out later in the normal coloring when they go and actually do the heist. Um, oh my gosh.
yeah, I'm also just going through the, like, we have this kind of reporter character that's kind of intertwined too, which is a
Hmm.
really fun wrinkle that kind of gives Sadami something to play off of in terms of like
Yes.
responsibility and this impending, like, that eventually leads to her turning herself in. Like there is
Hmm.
that, it doesn't come out of nowhere where you're like, well, we don't really get anything of anybody being after her. Like
Exactly.
we do. Everything's very foreshadowed. Everything's very like plotted out very
Yes.
well.
And she talks to the reporter before she turns herself in. Uh,
Yeah,
so it's very much you can see her taking accountability in like various avenues going on because she wants to tell the
yeah,
story of Radiant Red.
yeah. And kind of to go back to the art a little bit, because I point out the action. The other thing that LaFonte does so exceptionally well is emotion.
The emotion,
Like
yes.
the anger in those like big widened mouth where your jaw unhinges more than it actually can to scream at somebody, or to head back to issue 6 of Radiant Black, like just the dead stare in the middle of the night, looking up at the ceiling. Like there's so much stuff. It's just like, okay, one panel, I know exactly how this character feels,
Yes.
and that is such a good ability to have in art. And I think that's my thing with simplistic art, where it's like when you have art that's a little more simplified, not really realist or anything like that, like this, I can go either way on it. You know, sometimes I absolutely hate it and sometimes I love it. And it really comes down to how dynamic is your movement, how good is the action, and how good is your emotion. Because those are the most important things in comics. And if you have a simplified style without that, it's going to show even more than if you had a realism style without that. But if you have a simplified style that has that really strong, it shows that even better because there's more of a focus on that. And that is what LaFontaine does.
Yes, and the choice to make so many of the action panels so big, I'm such a fan of with this more kind of bolder art style, more simple art style. Like there's a sequence of pages where basically across 4 vertical panels, each taking up half a page, we see Radiant Red and Shift in combat. And it looks so good in a way that I don't know, it tells the story in giant moments instead of making the action feel fluid. It makes me feel like I'm watching like the most important spot. And I think that LaFontaine is so good at picking those spots.
I agree. It's really, the art's a treat. Like it's just, it's really powerful. It connects with the story being told, and it's very purposeful.
Yes.
Which is very important, and it comes across. It's not, there's no wasted effort. I think that all of it lands the way that it's supposed to, which is really something to be said.
For sure. And like you were saying, master of both action and emotion. And I think the page layouts work in both of those as well. Like there are a couple of spots that I made note of when reading. One of them is when Satomi is making this decision about essentially who she wants to be. Is she going to, become this criminal? Is she going to fight the criminals? She ends up doing a little bit of both. She kills them, but also is able to save Owen. There's this great split panel of her where we can see her as kind of like a mourning widow in one panel and her as a super criminal in another, and you can see these just completely different sides of her. And she rejects both of them, and we see this big kind of standalone image of her standing there in her kind of molten mercury suit, standing up for who she is. And it's so rad because they don't know yet, but she knows who she is in that moment.
And I think that it happens again, unless this is also the panel that you're talking about. But you said she was in like her big suit at that point, and she's not here. There's another one right where like Owen is kind of like tied up. Shift goes after. Like there's another panel where she's literally breaking through the like grid, and she's between them, and it's one side is Owen being like talking to her, and she's like, not the time, and on the other side it's a Shift being like, I'm so disappointed, and it's just her literally breaking through her panel to literally like cut off and come in front of both of them. So good, and it parallels the panel that you're talking about. So it's just, there's a lot of intentionality, and I don't want to sound like I'm just repeating myself, but there's just so much intentionality. There's so much, everything's thought out really well in this mini series, and that's what makes it land so well.
Agreed. And kind of a finishing thought on the art, it's also just it's so stylized, which I'm such a big fan of. Like, you think of your typical comic art, and it's not that it all looks the same, but it definitely has an aesthetic. There's a reason you can think of comic art, and this really steps outside of that aesthetic, which I think one works super well for the one shot that is issue 6 of Radiant Black, and for this TPB, this collected edition that is kind of outside of the story of Radiant Black and giving us this character deep dive. It feels so intentional to give uh, Satomi this style that feels different, that really lets us know that we're looking at a different character. And I wouldn't say telling a different type of story, but it is a much more kind of
I might say it's a different type of story. It's
right.
much well.
It's
I mean, there's a similar emotion. Because like to say that Radiant Black doesn't have emotionality and doesn't have like moral quandary, like it does to some extent. But I don't think it's unfair to characters. This is a different kind of story because it does
yeah,
feel like it.
exactly. Um, yeah, I think it's just such a good choice, uh, and it paid off so well because this looks so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of keep playing like the diff story, it's just Sadami's such an interesting character from this point of like she's not, and like I Marshall really isn't either, but he's a little bit of a different conversation. But she's not a perfect character. She's not even inherently a heroic character. She's not really
Yeah,
going out of her way to save anybody, so I don't think it's wrong to say she's not a
I mean, our
heroic character.
introduction to her is her robbing banks and
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
our superhero main character into a coma.
Yeah, yeah. So, not a heroic character, but not a selfish character either.
Mhm.
Like, it's very much a, like, uh, weight of the world on your shoulders type of character, but in a very interesting angle to that. Um, and it allows for a lot of character growth and a lot of character exploration.
Mhm.
Um, because I don't think, because I think the thing that you've repeated a lot of times, like rejecting all of this for like who she is. I agree, but I'm also going to make the point of I don't think she knows who she is for most of the
Oh, for
story that's
most of
being
it, for
told.
sure. This is
Um,
definitely her journey of discovery.
and even like, I think it's more of at the end, like I think it's more of the person she wants to be, because I
Mhm.
don't know if she ever quite reaches until maybe literally that final moment of turning herself in, and a little bit of the moment where she breaks out from Owen and defeats Ship. Like
Mhm.
it happens in stages, and I think that's the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make. Like I think it's just this slow step toward this is the person I want to be, and she's
Yes.
like getting there.
Yeah, and this it's so, like you were saying, it's so well focused on that and so just well done across these, what is it, 5 issues plus the prologue.
5 issue plus
Um
well, it's a
yeah.
it's a 6 issue like thing, but it's if you count
Yeah.
the Radiant Black, but it's 5 issues of content.
Yeah, and I think that it feels so complete in that. I feel like
Yes,
I am very satisfied with her arc as she goes through here and gets to the end.
yeah. There's no wasted space. Like this is
Mhm.
what I talked about issue 1 being a little slow. Like there's a lot of important stuff in there. Maybe
Mhm.
that has a little bit, but post issue 1 and including issue 6 of Radiant Black, so the vast majority of this, no wasted space.
Yes.
Pages are used to the best of their ability. Panels are used to the best of their ability. It's just really well constructed, and I think the word constructed
Mhm.
is important there because it's like you said, it's very much a full thing.
Yeah.
Does obviously Sadami turning herself in, shared universe type of book obviously leave questions and doors to be followed up on.
Mhm.
Obviously, it does, but it works very much as its own bubble.
It absolutely does. Um yeah, just so fun, so well done. Uh do you have anything else to say about Radiant Red?
I think I've gushed about almost everything I can think of. It's a really really good book from some really great talent. I really I'm gonna scroll for names again because I'm so bad. I really hope to see Cherish Chen doing more comics
Mhm.
because clearly has an innate. Well, innate's maybe wrong because she worked on
Yeah.
other mediums to get that out, but in terms of transferring to comics, I think has a very good sense of
Mhm.
comics, and I would love to see uh, them do more books. And obviously, we're having LaFuente do Sinister Sons, which we're going to be picking up.
Yes.
But anybody who worked on this book, keep doing comic books because it's good shit. That's
Yeah.
my end
Last
note.
question for you. Something
Ooh,
that I
okay.
think is a little important for people tuning in who maybe haven't read uh, any of the Massive Verse, which is the
Yeah.
Radiant Black universe. Do you think you can jump into this without having read Radiant Black?
not without reading Radiant Black. Like if you're talking about the miniseries, not without reading Radiant Black issue 6. Like if you're talking about the compendium, maybe.
Yeah, like I'm just talking
You
picking
know,
up the TPB.
yeah, if you're picking up the TPV that has Radiant Black issue 6, maybe I would read volume 1 of Radiant Black. I think you lose something by not doing that, by not having the kind of lead into this character through the eyes of Radiant Black and seeing her placed up as like a full-on villain at first. I think you lose something there. I do think it works as a standalone. Again, Radiant Black issue 6 being important. It's in the TPB,
Which
but if
I
you just
believe
pick up the miniseries.
Yes, it is included in the.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if somebody goes, do not pick up Radiant Red issue 1 and start reading the miniseries and think you're going to be okay, because you're really not. You're going to be a little lost. So, that I think you can pick up the TPB, but I would read volume 1 of Radiant Black at the very
Also,
least
volume
first.
1 of Radiant Black is great. Read it anyway.
And if you want to go through the whole Massiverse, 1 and 2 of Radiant Black, then jump here. That is the ideal reading experience. That works really, really well, and it's very enjoyable. And the Massiverse is fun. I think we're going to continue diving into it.
Yes.
How
My
much of it
secret
will cover on the
hope
pod,
is that we keep having fun talking about Radiant Black and then just catch up to it with it releasing still.
I think they keep doing 0.5s. I keep seeing that release like on the same day as the main issue. So like I think 29 and 29.5 just came out. I don't know what that's about. I'm sure we'll learn when we get there.
We catch up so we can find out.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed this. This is my kind of comic book. Like there's not much else. Like this is my kind of comic book, and it's really good stuff. So
well, fantastic.
2 thumbs up and a pull-list rack or a read rack from me.
From me too.
Anything else, Katie,
from
you, Katie?
Nothing else from me. Thanks so much for tuning in for this special bonus episode. This is not a Strange Saturday Super Show, but we are hoping to put out a bonus episode coming in with my D&D brain, just bonus action. A bonus episode once a month to pair with the Strange Saturday Super Show.
It'll be on the opposite Saturday. So like every 2 weeks, essentially, we want to be having a bonus episode.
Yes, the second Saturday and the fourth Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. So
if there's any TPBs that you want to hear us talk about, definitely let us know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Last thing, if you want to see our review of Radiant Black Volume 1, check out episode number 1 of the podcast. The latest episode of the podcast, when this goes up, my brain thinking should be episode 5 of the podcast, I believe
so.
Which will have a great interview with Nick Mueller of Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter. So check that out. But I think that's going to be it for us. See you next time.
Comic Geeks.